Okay, let's picture this. A quiet Amish farm, 100 acres, out in Lancaster County, East Paradise Township, early morning.
You know, the kind of place where life follows a certain rhythm. Cows mooing, chores starting.
But then everything changes. In the barn, specifically the tack room, under some blankets, someone finds a dead baby.
It's just shocking. And it leads straight to this accusation against an 18-year-old Amish woman, Katie Fisher. Murder.
Yeah. We've got a whole load of source material here, reports, articles, you name it, gives us a real window into this.
Absolutely. It lets us look at the events, the people, and this real clash,
Oh.
the Amish world versus the English legal system.
So that's what we're doing today. A deep dive. Using these sources to unpack it, all the evidence, the different angles, the culture, the human cost.
Let's start right there in the barn that morning.
Okay, so it's early, like 4:30 a.m. maybe. The sources describe the men heading out, Samuel, Levi, Aaron, and the elder, Elam.
Yeah, the usual stuff. Mixing feed, shoveling manure. You can almost smell it, right? The farm smells.
But Elam, Aaron's father, he notices something, smells something, says, looks like you had a calf.
The natural assumption, right? Another animal birth.
But it's Levi, described as the youngest one helping out. He goes into the tack room, that little storage space, looking for pants, actually.
And he sees this bright color, a jewel green shirt, kind of rolled up under horse blankets.
He lifts the blankets, and
Yeah.
there's the baby, wrapped in the shirt. Still.
The shock must have been immense. Elam apparently still thinks calf for a second. But Levi, he knows.
And meanwhile, you have Katie waking up. The sources say she's incredibly sore, just exhausted.
She realizes the baby she just delivered and the scissors she used, they're gone.
And the hay where she was, it's fresh, cleaned up.
Her first thought, according to what she says later, is just this desperate prayer for it all to go away, a feeling she'd apparently had for months about the pregnancy itself.
So when the police and EMTs get involved and she's taken to the hospital, her physical state is, well, it's critical evidence.
She's bleeding heavily, vaginally. Her uterus hasn't contracted like it should after birth.
And when they try to examine her, she's resisting, distressed, crying. It's all just awful.
This is where Officer Lizzie Monroe comes in. She arrives at the farm, secures the scene.
Talks to the men. They all say, nope, no women here. We're pregnant.
Monroe notices things, though, like missing scissors near the calving pen, the kind used for cutting twine.
Then she sees Katie's condition at the hospital.
And her suspicion immediately falls on Katie. She calls the county attorney, George Callahan. The wheels start turning.
Yeah, the case against Katie starts building based on, what seems like pretty damning circumstances.
And that really pulls the English legal world right into the heart of this Amish community through the lawyer, Ellie Hathaway.
Right. The sources paint Ellie as this ambitious lawyer, building her career, maybe a bit focused on winning, less on the clients personally, at first anyway.
But there's this mention of personal loss, too. A miscarriage, it's implied, which kind of subtly connects her to Katie's situation, maybe more than she realizes initially.
She gets involved because Lita calls her. Lita is Katie's aunt, but she's been excommunicated, shunned.
Lita just lays it out. Baby found dead, wasn't stillborn, Katie's accused. Can you help?
Ellie's first reaction, no, not my kind of case.
But Lita doesn't back down. She tells Ellie, look, Katie's own mother, Sarah, she doesn't have the fight in her for this. Lita trusts Ellie.
And she frames it as a huge opportunity for Ellie, too. Define your career kind of case.
So Ellie takes it. A big step.
That first court appearance sounds intense. Katie's clearly overwhelmed. Her cap, the white head covering, keeps slipping.
And Lita greets Ellie so warmly, people nearby think Ellie must be Amish, too, a relative. Shows how quickly assumptions are made.
Totally. Then comes the bail hearing. Ellie asks for these specific conditions. Katie has to stay in the township, live at home, and be supervised. Always.
Bail's set at $20,000. But the supervision part, that's the kicker.
Yeah, Lita basically tells Katie's mom, Sarah, the judge said Katie has to be with Ellie at all times, so let's go.
Meaning Ellie has to move in. Onto the Fisher farm. To supervise Katie as part of the bail.
Which is just, wow. Suddenly, this English lawyer is embedded deep inside the world she's trying to navigate for her client.
And the sources give you a real feel for that world. The farm itself, 100 acres, creek, colorful, smells of horses, honeysuckle earth. Sounds quite beautiful, actually.
Inside the house, Ellie finds it maybe less strange than she expected. Rag rugs, quilts, a hutch. Familiar in some ways.
But the differences are stark. Gas appliances, not electric.
Yeah.
Because electricity means connecting to the outside world, the grid.
No TV, no VCR. Books are in German, including The Martyr's Mirror.
Ah, yes, the Martyr's Mirror. That's a really significant detail.
It really is. For anyone listening who doesn't know, it's this huge book for Anabaptists like the Amish and Mennonites, full of stories of people who died for their faith.
Exactly. It reinforces their history, their separation, their commitment. Seeing it there tells you a lot about the mindset.
So Ellie's living this life, helping shell peas, learning to quilt, hanging laundry, which apparently reminds her of her own mom.
Even working in the tobacco fields, Katie teaches her how. You get the sense of immersion, but also constant awareness of the differences.
Like the rule at supper, no English spoken, a constant barrier. And their education system, stopping at 8th grade, which Jacob mentions later, very different priorities.
And technology, it's complicated. Some Amish might allow cell towers on their land for money, but the Fishers are stricter. No phones, no grid electricity.
Which is tough for Ellie, right? She needs her cell phone for the case, has to drive miles just to charge it. Her lifeline to her own world.
This deep immersion, living there, doesn't just show the lifestyle. It throws all these intense relationships into sharp focus.
Yeah, let's get into those. They're crucial. First, Katie and Samuel.
They grew up together. First kiss behind a shed. He's meant to be her safety net in the community. That's the expectation.
He seems to really love her. Tells Ellie flat out, she didn't murder her baby. He has to believe it.
And he volunteers to testify for her, which is a big deal. The Amish usually avoid courts, lawsuits, prefer to handle things internally.
Plus, his alibi is solid. Milking with Levi at 4:30 a.m., confirmed by his parents, by Levi, puts him outside the Emmy's window for the baby's death.
Then there's Jacob, Katie's older brother. His story provides so much context.
He was excommunicated, kicked out, essentially, for wanting an English education, going to college.
And their father, Aaron, his reaction was incredibly severe. Disowned him. Forbade contact, just cut him off.
But Katie kept seeing him, secretly, in the English world. Went to movies, wore jeans, felt, like a normal girl for a bit.
Jacob, having been outside, he sees the rules differently. Sees their father's harshness. He actually says murder is an English thing, not something they do.
The sources also say he tried to keep Katie and Adam apart by hiding letters. Adds another wrinkle.
Adam.
Right.
The baby's father. An English professor, friend of Jacob's.
And he had no idea Katie was pregnant. None. He was away doing research.
When he finds out about the baby's death, Katie's arrest, he's devastated.
Clearly loved the idea of his son, Hannah, wants to see the grave, talks about seeing apparitions of Katie and the baby. Deep grief.
And he testifies he would have married her immediately if he'd known. Instantly.
Within the immediate family, Katie's mom, Sarah, her support grows over time.
Yeah, initially she wasn't keen on Ellie staying, because Aaron disapproved, but she shows these quiet acts of care, making Ellie chamomile tea.
And performing this incredibly intimate, difficult task of massaging Katie's breasts to relieve the milk after the birth. A mother's instinct kind of pushing through the rules.
Aaron, the father, he's the strict one. Defined by the ordnan, the unwritten rules of Amish life.
His treatment of Jacob hangs over everything. He even tells Sarah he'll side with the church, with the ordnung, over Katie if she's put under the ban, the shunning.
He doesn't even go to the trial. Just a quick goodbye to Sarah. Elam, the grandfather, is there, though. Represents that older generation.
And then there's Ellie's own relationship developing with Coop.
He's a psychiatrist, a friend. And he gets deeply involved in the case strategy.
He evaluates Katie, brings up things like dissociation, denial, this idea that her mind might have sort of just disconnected from the trauma.
Which becomes huge for the defense. They even consider an insanity plea at one point because of it.
Coop's also just there for Ellie. Personally, their relationship deepens.
And there's this parallel. Ellie has her own pregnancy scare, then finds out she is pregnant with Coop's child during the trial.
Yeah, talk about contrast. Her experience versus Katie's hidden pregnancy and secret traumatic birth must have been incredibly complicated for Ellie, emotionally.
So with all that swirling around the culture, the relationships, the trauma, the trial starts. Prosecution versus defense, two very different stories from the same facts.
The prosecution, led by George Callahan, using Lizzie Monroe's investigation, they lay out what looks like a pretty clear case.
They focus on the physical evidence, the ME's report, bruising on the baby's lips, cotton fibers found in the throat, homicide, that's the ruling.
They point to the scene. Bloody hay covered up, the nightgown missing, the baby hidden away, actions that look like concealment.
And Katie's behavior is key for them. Hiding the pregnancy, they see that as planning, delivering secretly, cleaning up, acting normal the next day.
Plus, she initially lies, Tells police and family she wasn't sure it had actually happened.
Their motive, fear. Not just of shunning, which happens, but specifically fear of her father. Fear of being banished like Jacob was, because the baby's father was English.
So the theory is she killed the baby to stay Amish to avoid that extreme punishment.
They bring in an expert, Dr. Riordan, a profiler. He talks about neonaticide killing a newborn within 24 hours.
Says Katie's actions fit the profile. Concealment, hiding the body. It shows intent, consciousness of guilt, according to him. Denial equals guilt, basically.
And the biggest piece for them, Katie on the stand. Callahan asks her straight, "Did you kill your baby?" And she says,
Yes.
For the prosecution, case closed, confession. Done.
But the defense, Ellie, with Coop's psychiatric insights, they come back hard, offering completely different interpretations, creating doubt.
On the physical evidence, they say, wait a minute. The baby was wiped clean, wrapped carefully in that green shirt? Lovingly, Ellie argues.
Does that sound like someone who just violently murdered her child? Ellie really pushes that point. It doesn't fit the narrative of rage or panic leading to killing.
And the medical evidence. This becomes absolutely crucial for the defense. Dr. Owen Ziegler, the pathologist, he re-examines his findings.
Initially, yeah, things like petechiae, those tiny red spots, and bruising could point to asphyxia, suffocation.
But Ziegler raised this major alternative, cordium pneumonitis, a serious infection during pregnancy. It could cause pneumonia, septicemia in the baby.
And then they find it, Listeria bacteria, using immunostaining, proof of infection.
So the defense hypothesis becomes maybe the baby died from this infection shortly after birth anyway, nothing to do with smothering.
Ziegler admits the initial findings weren't conclusive for smothering. Could even look like SI DIS if soft bedding was involved. That's huge reasonable doubt right there. Cause of death is now uncertain.
They also tackle the motive. Ellie explains, yes, the Amish shun for unwed births, but it's usually temporary, followed by forgiveness, reintegration. Not permanent banishment like Aaron did to Jacob.
So while Katie was surely afraid, especially given Jacob's experience, does that fear automatically equal a motive for murder within the normal Amish context? The defense argues, probably not.
They use character testimony.
Yeah.
Jacob saying Katie's kind, selfless, wouldn't hurt a fly, basically, catches spiders to put them outside.
He repeats that idea. Murder is an English thing. It's foreign to their way of thinking, their world.
And Katie's mental state is central. Coop's idea of dissociation. Katie herself describing her head not working like normal, not knowing what was real. The defense suggests she was in such shock, such a traumatic state, she genuinely might not remember or understand what happened. It wasn't a calculated act.
So what about that yes on the stand, the confession?
Ellie reframes it completely through Amish culture. She explains this practice of confessing quickly to minor sins, accepting punishment just to get it over with, show remorse, and get back into the community's good graces.
It's not necessarily an admission of legal guilt in the English sense. It's a cultural mechanism for reconciliation. Very different meaning.
The defense also highlights that Katie said she felt love for the baby once it was born. She wanted her baby. That contradicts the neonaticide profile of someone wanting to eliminate an unwanted child.
And of course, Samuel's alibi holds firm. He was definitely elsewhere, couldn't have been involved.
As the trial unfolds, you see these key turning points highlighted in the sources.
Like Ellie's internal shift. Realizing it's not just about winning anymore, she genuinely cares for Katie, sees her almost like a daughter she needs to protect.
And the struggle to get Katie's full story. Ellie needs the truth, but Katie finds it hard to talk. Is it trauma? Dissociation? Just the Amish way of keeping things private?
The moment Katie finally reveals Adam's name, the English father, that's a huge breakthrough. Connects the dots.
Coop and Ellie's talks about dissociation are crucial for figuring out if Katie's lying or genuinely disconnected. That shapes the whole defense.
And Dr. Ziegler changing his emphasis, the Listeria discovery that's probably the biggest game changer, medically speaking, introduces that scientific doubt.
There's also that scene where Ellie takes Katie to visit a prison before the trial.
Right. A real shock tactic, maybe. Show her what's truly at stake, the harsh reality, the other inmates.
Then he's all yes in court.
Yeah.
A bombshell moment. But immediately followed by Ellie's cross-examination, putting it in that crucial Amish context, trying to undo the damage.
Callahan's closing argument for the prosecution sounds powerful, pulls all their threads together, the evidence, the actions, the motive linked to Jacob, the confession, a strong final pitch.
But then the jury asked for the psychiatrist transcripts, both Riordan and Coop. That tells you they're really grappling with Katie's mental state. The defense strategy hit home.
And while they're deliberating, Callahan offers a plea deal. Guilty plea? 4 to 7 years.
Which suggests maybe the prosecution isn't quite as confident anymore. They see the doubt that's been created.
Adam hears about the plea offer. He comes to see Katie. The sources describe this final, really moving conversation between them.
Yeah, acknowledging their shared loss, their son, Hannah, a moment of connection despite everything that separates them.
And that final scene with Sarah, Katie's mother, as Ellie is leaving the farm, it's powerful.
Sarah admits she didn't want Ellie there at first, but watching Ellie fight for Katie, she understood that fierce mother love that crosses cultures.
And she gives Ellie the scissors. What a strange, loaded gift. What does that even mean? Connection. A reminder. Who knows?
It just underscores how complex this whole thing is. The sources really show it's a puzzle. Legal pieces, medical pieces, cultural, personal, all fitting together, or maybe not quite fitting.
You see this fundamental clash, don't you? The English legal system needs clear facts, intent, motive, black and white answers.
But Amish life, individual trauma, things like dissociation, they operate in shades of gray. They don't fit neatly into legal boxes. Fear is real, but its consequences aren't always logical.
The sources really let us see how the exact same evidence, hiding the body, cleaning up, even saying yes, can build two totally different stories depending on the lens you use.
Was it murder born of fear?
Mm-hmm.
Or a tragedy rooted in trauma, confusion, maybe an infection that would have claimed the baby anyway? The sources lay out both possibilities.
So maybe the thing to think about after this deep dive is this. How do we tell the difference between deliberate harm, accident, and actions driven by things like overwhelming fear or a state of mind that's fractured, whether it's in a courtroom or just in trying to understand each other?
And how much does someone's whole cultural world shape not just their actions, but also how we interpret their guilt, their responsibility, even what we consider to be the truth?